what used to be one-offs, very short, quick responses are now just sort of emails into the void. That makes me uneasy because I have been the responder and then I get personal emails and I say, yes, I'm asking the board. And it sounds like I'm passing the buck, but I really am asking the board how to respond.
But it seems like if you're answering emails that you should be able to differentiate between comments and longer responses, and therefore those longer responses need board decisions, so you can determine that.
I'm not answering any emails, I'm asking because everything is going to the board now. And I think that's the conversation to have, is if people want me to answer emails and allow me to use my discretion, or if people want every comment to go to the board.
Maybe we should review the letters in 5 minutes at every meeting. So we have everybody here, we can just go bam.
Yeah, but is it reasonable to tell someone wait up to 30 days before we give you any kind of response?
Perhaps.
I mean,
I think you could send out a canned response saying, we received your email, we'll talk about it at the next board meeting, and then they know that.
And if it's time sensitive, we're sorry.
Mhm.
If it's time sensitive, we're not gonna get back to you because we're a 13-member board, we can't do anything for 30 days. I mean, that's really what it feels like we're saying.
Yeah, if there could be
Well-
maybe a printout of what did come, and that at every meeting you do read the printout, and you could let them know that it would be seen by the board, and then there would still be discretion as to what kind of detail, anything needed to be done.
are we comfortable waiting that long? I mean, that seems...
Well, right now, they're just waiting, they're just
Yeah.
not getting responded to. So I think, and if it's,
Say, thank you for your comment.
I think most of the messages that we've received would warrant what Myra's saying.
well, no, there were meaty questions asking about the videotaping, that didn't get a board response. There were a couple. And there were George's direct mail questions, which
Yeah,
were
it's
mostly
like,
just
yeah.
comments.
Is that unusual?
But I think
though? Or is that kind of uncommon for emails, being that you've been on the board for a while, but?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I think that's not run-of-the-mill emails, so that's unusual, right?
Yeah, some of the emails that I see are like, please delete me or please add me to the mail. A lot of it's like, I can just add them
Easy
to my
stuff to
MailChimp. Or some of it's like, we get spam, like here's a CD event, that kind of stuff. But lately it's been more meaty stuff that
Mhm.
I just
Yeah.
go,
But if we get an email about an issue that an organization needs,
Right, and
something dealt, we've dealt with that in the past by.
right, but we haven't dealt with, in particular, the video emails didn't get any responses from the board. And didn't get any responses among the board. And I think that, we need, that's just one example, but I think that there will be other examples of things that people would like, it's your neighbors, they wanna hear an answer.
So it sounds like
But
a
I do
protocol.
think
Sorry.
that those emails that require a response should be responded to, as you've suggested, with a thank you for emailing. This is a matter that will be brought before the board at the next board meeting, at which point we will respond. And that isn't passing the buck. That's making us what we should be, which
So
is
instead of doing it by email, we'll just hold everything for 30 days.
Well, and you could even put something on the
no.
website
I
saying,
think
letting people know that the board meets once a month, and so therefore you will receive a response. Just a short little, receive a response, but if you want something more in depth, it'll take 30 days from, your email.
Well, it isn't necessarily 30 days from the email, it depends on when they send it, right?
Sure.
Three days before meeting.
But,
But if there's
Just
a
cheerfully tell them it'll be dealt with at the next,
Yeah.
Okay. Who wants to be the responder? Because who will do that? Amy checks the emails, she sends them to the board. Who wants to take on we'll get back to you in 30 days or less?
Can we have Gmail do that?
I think there's an automatic response.
I'm pretty sure I could probably figure something out to have Gmail auto reply.
Well, but I think it's filtering, because right now we have that generic email address. So it's everything from the administrative, delete me from your mailing list, to I think you guys are doing public outreach the wrong way. So an auto reply is going to cast too broad a net.
Would it be possible for them to select which thing, like, I want to be taken off this list, or I would like to make
Yeah,
a
we can
comment
add that
to
to
the
the
board,
website.
or I have a simple question.
Have a specific email address for,
You can have a form, like take me off the
Yeah.
list, you know, like where it's
Yeah.
specific things so they can identify whether they, you know, whether it's just a,
Well, actually MailChimp does that. That was.
Oh, MailChimp does
MailChimp
that.
does that, but if people want to be
Okay.
added or
okay.
people have questions, you know.
so,
I have a quick question, or I want this taken up by the board,
yeah,
or I want my name on.
I can investigate this and work on the solution before.
You
next
will be
meeting.
the responder.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, I'm getting you a t-shirt.
Responder.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Elections or partnership talk first? Any preference?
You?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the time,
Okay.
and maybe we better put a partnership up or
Until we
talking
talk about
about.
elections, okay, just to be time, that makes sense, yeah, okay. So, last month, we had nominations for, I'm looking at you, Miguel
Miguel.
and Myra, to serve as vice chair. Do we have any, they both accepted. We had lots of other nominations, there was a lot of hot potato, it was fairly entertaining, but those were the two that actually accepted the nominations.
At the meeting last time I hadn't accepted, but
Oh.
I'll accept it.
Okay.
He's thought it
Put him on the spot.
Okay, well, are there any other nominations for vice chair? Gonna have a new round of hot potato, okay.
Could there be co-vice chairs, or no, there's just one?
Bylaws, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, I think the bylaws say one.
I mean, you have co-chairs, we can't have two vice chair, two co-vice chairs.
You could go to co-chairs.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what they have in Southeast.
deputy
With,
vice
yeah.
chair.
On vice. Okay, so are there any other nominations? Okay, so should we have 30 seconds, 60 seconds from each of you to talk, and then we can do
I mean,
a vote?
I've kind of got a point of order, if at some point we're going to have a vote.
Yes,
I think that could just be really divisive, having that deliberation discussion recorded forever, because we're talking about specific people and those sorts of things. And I just kind of want to raise that in terms of, it's the idea of an executive session, when you're talking about people in the room and personnel. If you guys are comfortable having an open deliberation about personality on recording, that's one thing, but I want to throw it out there.
I'm sorry, just help me understand what you're, I'm missing what you're
I think
expressing.
as we're discussing about electing somebody to be the chair, and we're talking about personalities, I don't know if that's a good practice to have that recorded and things like that. I want to raise that and see if everybody is comfortable or concerned.
Does he think it should be like confidential personnel matters?
I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean,
And then,
generically,
how you do the vote, do we do
Or
secret
you
ballot
can
or
ask to
hand
have
vote?
the recording turned on.
yeah.
Okay.
But I wanted to spark a discussion. I mean, I know it's typically with open meetings, you go into executive sessions and things like this.
Well, this isn't really executive session, this is a
Well,
board meeting.
But you go into executive session when you're talking about usually finances and personnel.
Yeah.
And this kind of sort of feels like personnel.
Well, I have no problem with it, so,
But yeah.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, personally, I don't either, although, I want to respect the request.
I mean, it's mainly, since you two have the most vested interest.
I would say that it's a good practice, just in general, when we're having this stuff. I would feel that we were having these type of, just conversations about, electing folks and like for those type of positions to just have an executive session. I just feel it's a good practice to do that, right?
So does that mean that you do feel the executive session should not be recorded? And I guess the other point is, we don't have any authority over the recording. So we can have this conversation, but it is not a choice of this board. We can make a request if any individual or if the group chooses, but we currently don't have a policy about recording, so.
Well, typically, from what I've read, if you go into an executive session, that is not public, and that is the choice of the organization to you know, even if you are a public organization, an executive session is not necessarily public. The board meeting itself, we've always said it's, you know, it's public, so this point of a meeting is public. If we vote to go into executive session, then it's not.
This part of the meeting is open to the public. It is-
Right,
it is-
so- which
but-
makes
but
it public.
Well, it actually doesn't, but I think the other thing is, it is not our camera. We are not stating the policy. We don't have any control of the recording device or the dissemination of the recording. So we can talk amongst ourselves all we want, but it would be ultimately the discretion of the people recording and disseminating the video. But I'm just, so Uni, you're thinking that the executive session, this would trigger an executive session, which if it were our choice, would shut down the recording? Or do you think executive session would be more, you would be more interested in increasing transparency, at least to clarify?
I think it's both are good points. I would think that there would be even topics that we might want to discuss as an executive body that we may not want recorded.
And to clarify, I mean specifically, you know, we're talking about people. If this was an actual dollars for employment, it would be no question. That's pretty standard practice with any nonprofit when you're talking about financial matters or employment matters. And this is, we're talking about, I just wanted to throw it out there if that was a concern, primarily to Myra and Miguel, but that's something to be aware of from other organizations.
Do the bylaws require, one way or another, whether elections are done in a public, this setting or in an executive session?
I don't think our bylaws ever cover executive session.
No.
That's the standard Robert's Rules
It's
of
just,
Order.
it's a parliamentary issue.
Well,
And it's just discussion for tonight, and it sounds like the group, I'm glad you brought the point up.
Yeah, I just wanted to see.
Yeah, thank you, that was very sensitive, but if the people involved don't mind.
And if it's a public session, it's a public session.
Well, the meeting
I
is
mean, if the
open,
public could
the
attend
meeting is
here.
open to the public.
Yeah.
The recording is a separate issue, but
But
the
the
meeting
public-
is open to the public.
The recording would be disseminated to, could be attending here.
Right,
Sure.
we're operating under, right now, we're in a really gray area we are implying consent, that coming into the room is implying consent to being recorded. We haven't actually stated as a board whether we want to require that consent of our members. We're just sort of doing it.
So that sounds like maybe that's something separate and we could
Yes,
get to the election.
but the executive session conversation is a point of order. Is that that was you? Sorry, I heard a buzz.
That was me.
So thank you for bringing that up. Is there any other discussion before we let the candidates do little stump speeches? And thank you, Judith, for being mindful of time. Should we rock, paper, scissors, or how do we?
I was thinking.
Yeah? Who's gonna go first?
Go ahead. Up to you.
Flip a coin.
Anybody have a point?
I'll go first.
Okay, I think McDowell, sounds like he's.
So I'm just gonna take a brief moment. I appreciate the nomination. I think that when I first started living on, when I first lived on Beacon Hill in 1986, obviously seen tremendous changes on Beacon Hill. I think we're also on the cusp of, obviously many more changes. I think the wonderful potential for new businesses, economic development, jobs. Also, and it's also been mentioned, the incredible culture and arts that's beginning to flourish or continuing to flourish, growing on Beacon Hill through a lot of different efforts and also through a lot of cross-pollination is very important. I think the cross-pollination question is very important as it relates primarily to those things, at least the two I mentioned. Obviously, like housing and accessibility and affordability are all issues that are very important and timely on Beacon Hill. And I think I didn't want to sound like a broken record, but the diversity committee, I think that, or the outreach committee, bringing in diversity and different perspectives, broadening, really growing the participation people for the North Beacon Hill Council, making people feel welcome and really nurturing as much participation as possible are some of the things that I feel are like really timely and important for the organization. So again, I appreciate the nomination. Thank you.
The reason that I'm interested and, I'd be honored to serve as vice chair is, first of all, I've lived on Beacon Hill for 20 years and have been involved in a number of different issues over the time that I've been here. Started by getting involved in neighborhood planning when that was occurring in the late 90s. Got interested in, I actually went to Jefferson Park at the time, and there was basically no space for the community, or very little space. There were 2 acres out of over 100 acres that were there. Everything was behind fences with barbed wire on top, and it just horrified me. And it made me realize how much our infrastructure really affects people's lives, and how we can, how a community can grow or not grow based on the infrastructure. And that decision to put those fences in and to put the barbed wire on top that affected so many of the kids who grew up on the hill for 50 years, that was made, in a moment of during the war, of fear of the other. But that feeling had been growing for a long time, and that sentiment to cut off access to the water supply had been talked about for many years. And so it made me realize, that if you put infrastructure into reality, that can affect generations. And so I got involved in the Jefferson Park planning and was involved in the planning committees for 2 or 3 rounds of planning until construction. And then I've been involved in other issues, mainly with DPD and how zoning occurs on the Hill, and a variety of other issues, including the infrastructure for broadband. And so, my concern is to make sure that, in whatever way possible, that Beacon Hill gets the kind of access that it needs to the resources from the city, and that we develop the neighborhood in a way that allows people to live to their full potential, especially kids growing up here. So whatever I can do along those lines, that's what I'm interested in doing.
Don't forget the book.
Yeah, and I've worked on a history book on Beacon Hill, co-author.
Okay. So, project there?
Well, I'd like to, are we gonna vote by Cedar Valley?
I was thinking we just do hands like we always do. Do you have a preference?
Are we going to have any discussion?
Well, we can have a discussion, but so yes, do we need any, yes, call for discussion, and then we'll bring up these points.
I would like to say that one of the things that I think Miguel has established and has been a long time standing North Beacon Hill Council, it's something that Chris's wife worked on and I worked on for all of the years that I was chair, was a good relationship with the city departments and city council. And Miguel has certainly established that, and for that reason, my vote would go to Miguel. Because I think that should be continued, that we continue to work with the city to let them know that we exist and that we are very concerned about our outreach and very concerned about the infrastructure of our community.
So the role of vice chair, we can talk about that, but is the most obvious one in the bylaws is that if the chair is not around to facilitate meetings. And then also the communications role, which has been in flux. as the board has grown and changed. But I think that, to echo what Judith said about the importance